But before we do that, we need you to sign on to the Abraham Accords.
When I was leaving the first Trump administration, right, I was told we were pretty close to a normalization of relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia.
We heard MBS tell Brett Baer.
Exactly.
Closer every day.
Could we see that in the future in response to this?
Well, just moments after those comments came Trump's post, the deal is totally subject to Saudi Arabia joining the Abraham Accords. Well, just to state the obvious with the situation in the Middle East right now, not only is that something the Saudis long resisted, it's just not a thing right now. Out front now, Democratic Congressman James Walkinshaw, member of the Homeland Security and Oversight Committees. And Congressman, I appreciate your time. So, look, there were a lot of criticisms about this deal. Marco Rubio, when he was asked, said he read about it in the press. He didn't even want to touch it, right? When you talk about another country in the Middle East being allowed to enrich uranium, there were a lot of very serious issues with it. Why do you think Trump, though, suddenly is pivoting, backing off, putting this new condition on the Saudis, not even 24 hours after he announced the deal?
It's hard to say other than the typical chaos and incompetence of the Trump foreign policy. I do think it's important context, though, to remind ourselves of Donald Trump's financial entanglements with Saudi Arabia. His holding company has received millions of dollars in direct payments. He's trying to build a Trump hotel and golf course in Saudi Arabia. And his son-in-law and envoy, Jared Kushner, is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Saudi royal family, has received billions and billions of dollars for his investment fund. So it's hard to know when Donald Trump is acting in his own personal financial interests or when he's acting in the interests of the American people.
You just mentioned a lot on the financial side. I want to lay some new reporting out here from Forbes' Dan Alexander, who is obviously a regular on this show. So he is reporting, Congressman, that Trump was building out more Saudi business connections as nuclear talks were being held. Specifically, one of the deals I believe you just mentioned, the deal for a Trump-branded hotel, golf, and residential project inside a massive $63 billion development in Saudi Arabia. And guess what? The firm planning that development, chaired by the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, right, who's in charge of the nuclear deal on the Saudi side. Dan also reports that during the nuclear talks, a Trump representative created new companies that, quote, gave the president an 80% stake in a hotel management agreement. His family members took the remaining 20%. Now, you mentioned the $2 billion that Jared Kushner has in money from Saudi Arabia. But, I mean, this is during the nuclear deal, a deal where the president gets 80% of the money and the rest of his family gets 20%. I mean, it's stunning, Congressman. The White House says to Forbes there are no conflicts of interest. What do you say?
Yeah, clearly we have a president of the United States in Donald Trump who is bought and paid for by MBS and the Saudi royal family. As the American people struggle to make ends meet, Donald Trump is raking it in, and it appears, at least initially, giving them in return a very sweet nuclear deal. Quite frankly, a much better deal than was on the table in the Biden administration, with much weaker inspections, at least initially, without a commitment to join the Abraham Accords. The Saudis must have been feeling like they were getting what they paid for.
So I want to ask you about one other thing while I have you, Congressman, because you're on the Oversight Committee, and I know today was an important day. You questioned Jeff Staley in the Epstein investigation. He's the former Barclays and J.P. Morgan Chase executive. He had ties with Jeffrey Epstein. We've reported that a woman told the FBI Staley sexually abused her inside Epstein's New York home after Epstein had directed her to massage Staley. And the FBI report says, quote, this ended in rough sex. She told Staley she did not want this. Staley admitted all this happened, but said it was consensual, right? So he denied the context around this. Did you learn anything from his testimony today?
I found him to be evasive and frankly, very difficult to believe. We know from the files that he and Epstein were close friends in addition to their banking relationship. Staley himself described their friendship as profound. Today, he told us that they weren't friends at all. We know that there are very serious and credible allegations against him in the files. He was banned from participating in the banking sector in the United Kingdom because financial regulators there found him to be untruthful or less than truthful about his relationship with Epstein. He covered for Epstein repeatedly when Red flags were raised internally at JP Morgan Chase about Epstein's large cash withdrawals that we know Epstein was using to pay the victims, now survivors. So I think Jess Daly is a perfect example of why Todd Blanche and the Department of Justice need to reopen the Epstein investigation and follow all of the allegations, interview those who haven't been interviewed, go back at Jess Daly and find the truth, because I think there's a lot more there.
And there certainly is a lot more there overall. As Representative Garcia has said, only half of the Epstein files have even been released, and that's not even talking about redactions and things that have been taken out of what is released. So, Congressman, I appreciate your time, and thank you very much. Next, the breaking news. We now know what was in the Nancy Guthrie ransom note. A new report out tonight saying that the note begins with the words, "Hello, Savannah, we have your mother."